Good evening, and this is the Commissioners' meeting of what Tuesday is August 11th for 2022, being held here at the Phoenix Conference Room. As I call the meeting to order, and all of those is who would like to stand up with us for the Pledge of Allegiance, please do so. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. The next item is approval of the minutes of September 19th, 2022.
So moved.
Do I have any discussion? I hear none, see none. I call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next up is informational reports and or presentation. And Alex, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Yep, I'm going to turn this over to Mary Payson, who has something ready to go for us, and she's going to give us a walkthrough of this. And, sorry, I went down there. And if there's anything Amy Jennings wants to jump in with first, I'll let her go.
Nope, Mary's ready.
Okay.
So first off, I just want to say thank you for your time and for welcoming me back to talk with you about the progress that Tom and I have made since the last time that we were in. As you might recall from our last visit, with your generous support, we purchased an applicant tracking system called Jazz HR. As you can imagine, learning and setting up a new system took some time, but we were finally able to go live with a corrections officer job posting at the end of August. Jazz HR enables us to put up a branded job advertisement with a simple and easy to submit application, which is a big improvement over the previous application, which was web-based and also a fillable PDF. Candidates are driven to our new application by dozens of job sites. And unlike the old method where we had to visit each job posting site to individually post our job ad, Jazz HR posts to dozens of syndicated sites with the mere click of a button. As you can see, since we had our ad go live, it's amassed nearly 2,000 views. Those nearly 2,000 views have resulted in 65 applications so far. And I was anxious to see, as I'm sure you are as well, how that compares to what we've been doing. We started collecting applicant data in January of 2021. Before using an applicant tracking system, we were averaging about 12.36 corrections applications per month. When the recruiting team came on board, we started sponsoring the corrections job advertisement on Indeed.com, and that was at a cost of about $500 a week. Isolating data during that time period shows that there was an increase to an average of 19.88 applications per month. Jazz HR has only been up and live for one full calendar month, which is September of 2022, but so far its numbers blow our average out of the water with 49 applications. And this is without the cost of sponsorship that we were paying for with Indeed. Jazz HR, for a comparison, costs about $92 a week. That being said, recruiting is cyclical. There are certain times of the year where people are more likely to look for new job opportunities. And September is definitely one of them. Kids go back to school, so parents, their schedules ease up, so they might actually start looking for work. So I wanted to do more of a side-by-side comparison. So I looked at the numbers for September of last year, and corrections got a total of 19 applications. So 49 is pretty comparatively pretty large. So the question is, what is it like for the 65 applicants who expressed an interest in our job? With the help of Jazz HR, they get automatic confirmation that Cumberland County has received their application right on their phone through text. They also get an email. When they apply, I get an email alerting me to their interest. If it's during working hours, I typically respond and review their application right away. For candidates who are not qualified, an email like this goes out. And as you can see on the right, I've created several templates that will tell the candidate exactly why their candidacy is stalled and how to fix it if that's possible. Jazz HR allows us to delay sending the email too, so that I can review the application right away, but the applicant isn't left feeling like they've just automatically been rejected. The other great thing about the rejection emails is reporting. We'll also be able to see why the candidates we attract aren't measuring up, and if there's anything that we can do to be more effective with our recruiting. For those who do meet our criteria, the candidate gets a follow-up text like this one, and an email with a link inviting them to pick a time on my calendar to interview virtually. No qualified candidate waits more than 48 hours, and that's actually long. It really only takes that long if the person happens to apply over the weekend for an interview invitation. There's also no more back and forth trying to find a mutually agreeable time to interview. The candidate just picks a time based on my availability and theirs on sort of like a mutual calendar, so it shortens that communication up. The interview process is also a snap with Jazz HR. Standard interview questions have been uploaded in the system, and when it's time to interview, the questions launch right from the candidate profile. The interviewer asks and records answers right from the system, and they stay there for the interviewing team and candidate record. If a candidate appears to be a match, we no longer need the manual process of creating an individualized conditional offer letter and email. A conditional offer packet has been preloaded into the system and is a click away, and I've lost my mouse for some reason. Let's see if this is going to work. Oh, there it goes. Let's go back. Sorry about that. All right. If a candidate appears to be a match, we no longer need the manual process of creating. I love technology when it works and not when it doesn't. All right, back to this. If a candidate appears to be a match, we no longer need the manual process of creating an individualized conditional offer letter and email. A conditional offer packet has been preloaded into the system and is a click away by advancing the candidate in this next stage of the workflow process. And best of all, the email no longer offers to have a sheriff's deputy pick up or drop off a 30-page packet. Everything is able to be signed, dated, answered, and submitted right from the candidate's computer, phone, or other mobile device. Jazz HR has an e-signature document capabilities, and we use it for offer letters right through to the polygraph questionnaire. Last week, a candidate was sent the polygraph questionnaire, returned it, and was given a future date to perform the polygraph all in the same day, which I don't think has ever happened before. Another great feature of Jazz HR is its reporting. We've already used the system to create reports that will help payroll with compensating applicant and employee bonuses for referrals and academy certification. And improving a long-time complaint of the jail's training department, we've also set up a report that notifies personnel responsible for training new hires as candidates move through the end stages of the process so that they can anticipate new trainees and plan accordingly. When we last met, we reported that there was an average timeline of about 3 months from application to date of hire. We've hired 3 candidates since the inception of Jazz HR, and their timelines from application date to hire date were an average of about 9 weeks. So it's been a slight reduction, which is great, but we hope that as we get more data, we'll have more information and continue to see that go down. We also last reported that half of our candidates drop out of the hiring process after receipt of a conditional offer letter. Since the inception of Jazz HR, Tom and I presented 25 candidates with conditional offers. Of those, 9 returned the materials and are either hired or in various stages of the hiring process. 8 are still collecting all of the required materials for submission to the jail. And an additional 8 candidates stopped communications or took a different job. So at present, we're slightly above the 50% mark. The reporting function is much more robust than what's featured here, but we don't have enough data, and because we're still learning how the system works, I was bouncing people in and out of workflow stages, so the reporting just isn't going to be accurate. But hopefully next time, it's all set up now, things will flow better and we'll have more information on how things work. When Tom and I first presented to this group, we reported that our first major goal was to build a strong foundation. We wanted to refine the hiring process to improve candidate experience, and we feel like we've done that with Jazz HR. The process is modernized and transparent for employer and candidate, and HR is now ready for large volume recruiting. We've increased the sign-on bonus for certified corrections officers, and will soon be rolling out a social media campaign. And Tom and my communications with targeted groups, such as Boots to Roots, Eastern Maine Community College, and Southern Maine Community College, continue to grow and evolve. Jazz HR also integrates with outbound recruiting platforms, and we hope that we'll be able to utilize those as well soon. We're ready to move forward, and we're excited to come back to you and report our continued progress and success with this new tool. I really appreciate everyone's time and my technological issues up here, and just want to know if anyone has any questions.
Commissioner Cloutier.
One of the things that we were wondering about for the last couple of years really is the efficacy of things like the polygraph examinations and other things. Are you guys tracking how those interface with your recruiting work in some way?
So, I guess I'm going to answer your question with a question. So, do you mean like how long that it takes us to get people through the polygraph exam? Are you asking like, do people pass the polygraph exam and then they actually end up being good employees, or they end up doing something wrong? So are you kind of like looking
Yes,
at?
I'm asking those questions.
Oh. Yeah. Well, I've honestly done my own research to kind of look and see, you know, like does a polygraph exam work? Does it do what it says it's going to do? And just like everything, there's two schools of thought. Some people swear by it and think that, you know, it's 100% foolproof. And then there are others that say that, you know, it doesn't really do what they think that it's going to do. As part of what I've done as well is, you know, sort of talked to other jails to find out what they do and how they do things to see, you know, honestly, I'm more than happy to let other jails be guinea pigs and try to test things out and see what they do and how it affects their processes. I know York County fairly recently got rid of their polygraph exam, so I'm kind of trying to build a relationship with them to see how that goes and see if they notice that it changes anything in the quality of their hires.
Do you have a kind of a cut rate from people that don't pass quality or don't perform acceptably, whatever that is on the polygraph? Candidates that get that far?
Well, I'm trying, you know, you'd be surprised that there's, I would have to look and see what the numbers are, but sometimes I am surprised, you know, when people pass the background check and then they don't pass the polygraph exam for whatever reason. But to be totally honest, I worked in a school department for 7 years before I came here, and I always used to tell my boss that we needed to strengthen the backgrounds that we did on employees, because I told them, you know, the only difference between somebody with a record and somebody without a record sometimes is whether or not they've been caught. So I think sometimes the polygraph exam at least weeds out people who maybe have been doing dishonest things or things that we would consider unethical. We wouldn't want them repeating at the jail and they just don't have a conviction record for it. So I think that it probably has some value in some cases, but then the other question that you have to ask too is just because they did X, you know, 10 years ago and admitted on a polygraph exam, does that mean that they can't be a corrections officer now? And I think that's like, it's like you're trying to choose like a good date or something. Like, you know, when you're looking at different people, you know, is this person marriage quality? I have no idea if they're going to repeat what they've done before, so.
Well, we know from the recent news that you don't have to pass these kind of things in order to be a U.S. senator, so.
Right, yeah. No, I totally, it's definitely something that I've looked at and that I've researched, and like I said, the fact that York County now is changing over, I am trying to develop a relationship with them to see if we can't get some information on how that goes for them. Yeah.
Just to follow up, the background check is taking the bulk of the time. Is that this 9-week period?
I think, honestly, you know, now those in the audience, so I'll talk, you know, to the fact that I feel like we've been working together really well.
And you've reduced it by a month, it sounds like, which is good.
Yeah, pretty close to that so far. The background checks seem like they've been coming back a lot quicker. So I don't know, you know, if it's been all hands on deck or what's changed at the jail, but we have been getting background check results back a lot quicker than what we had been seeing before. I think right now one of our major holdups is the fact that the polygraph exam, the person who's technically in charge of it is still sort of in training, and right now, from what I've seen, it seems like they get scheduled 2, maybe 3 weeks out from after they pass back the polygraph questionnaire, so it does take a while to get people scheduled for that.
May I also add, part of Jazz HR also gives us the ability to do background checks through their system, and with a turnaround of 24 to 48 hours. So currently, the Sheriff's Department is reviewing that side by side to see if that's something that they're willing to consider. In addition, we have lost some candidates, as we've discussed, due to marijuana use.
Sure.
One of the things that we are looking from the Department of Labor is to get a policy on testing as in a post-offer physical for marijuana use, as to get that out of the way. So that is a process in itself to get a policy in order to do that. So we're in the works of doing that too.
Thank you.
Maybe you could help me on that. Is there some source of policy that affects somebody's candidacy if they smoke marijuana?
They're automatically disqualified by the
What is
Sheriff's
reason
Department.
for that?
That, Naldo?
Is that a Sheriff's Department policy or?
That is for federal guide, it's still illegal federally, so it's under that umbrella.
Yeah. It's not so illegal in Maine.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of federal guidance to affect the personal use is not
Yes,
being considered.
yes.
It seems a little arbitrary to me. Just saying.
So, trying to eliminate that as an immediate disqualifier. Typically, if the process does take, 6 to 8 weeks, if they do stop smoking marijuana, hopefully it'd be out of their system by the time they get to the post-offer physical, and we let them know that, immediate stopping of smoking pot would probably be a good idea if you really do want to pursue a career in corrections or law enforcement. So that's why we're looking to get that policy in, and then that takes, those people then are allowed to pursue in the hiring process.
I'm sure it's at least possible. One or two of the commissioners did not ever smoke pot.
But once I get that policy, yeah, I can run you guys through a physical if you'd like. But that's all I have.
Do we have any other questions?
No?
This is much improved from what we've
Yeah.
been seeing.
No, it is. It's amazing.
I'm very pleased with the
Good.
progress on this.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm pleased with the progress. And you can ask Amy. I was on the phone. They do phone calls. You can do discovery calls, and you can get online and chat with their reps. And I must have been on there with them 6 to 12 times a day while I was trying to set this up. Because I push the system to its limits. I want to know what it's going to be able to do and how we can use it. And so I'm talking to them about some of the things that I'm creating. They're like, well, that may be a little too large for the system. And I'm like, well, we're going to find out. and everything's been working fine. I'll say I'm glad that we went with this company. Their customer service is definitely above board. Even when I talk to people, honestly, this staffing shortage and hiring of new people is happening everywhere, because it's even within Jazz. When I talk to people, they say, well, I'm brand new, so I don't have the answer for what you're trying to do, but let me get it for you. And they've been really good. And because of that, we've got this system up and running. And I was even speaking with Bill Trufant today about some of his hard to hire positions and telling him, we're really getting ready to start putting other positions on here and starting to move other things over. So this is really good. It's very exciting.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. Ready? Oh, you have to wait? All right. Do you know how to do it?
Moving on.
Just plugging it in.
Right. Oh, I was going to say, okay. Comments from the public, seeing no public, so we will go on. Okay, with the consent agenda, do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Move passage.
Second.
Are there any discussions or anything on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I call for a vote for item 22-107, 22-108, and 22-109. I call for vote. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Going down, there is no more business for the opera funds. Moving on to newer business. I'm going to turn this over to you, Alex. for the proclamation of the Domestic Violence Awareness Month for October 2022.
Certainly, I have a proclamation here for the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I can read it all out loud, or you folks can move passage as written in your packet.
What is your desire? Do you want him to read it all?
I would just as soon rely on the package material. We dance this every year, and we're very glad to do it, to support this very important.
Do I have a
Passage.
do I have a
Second.
Okay. No other discussion? I call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is item 22-111, the authorization of the executive department to enter into contract negotiations on a fire and emergency response regionalization study. I'll turn this over to you, Alex.
Certainly. So this is another step in the chain as we continue to speak with communities about the fire EMS possibilities to move towards a regional program for this. This is from Travis Kennedy, who could not be here tonight, but the position paper is pretty straightforward. It is to select Dynamics Consulting Group to be the group that really starts managing the process of starting to try to turn this into something more concrete. They were one of 4 consultants that were considered. There were 3 that were worthy of interviews. I think within Travis's position paper, I point out, 2 sentences that make this pretty straightforward. While Dynamics was the lowest cost bidder for this contract, panel members were instructed not to consider cost in their review of the participants. Still, Dynamics still rose to the top. So they won on both quality and price to move forward. If the commissioners approve this, we'll enter into a contract with them. And they'll get going on really starting down the next steps as we continue to have some very real interest in pursuing this, which is very exciting.
Move passage of this item.
Second.
Do we have any discussion?
I would just make a comment. I think this is a strong idea for us along the path of regionalization of services and working with our member communities as a group. And we've talked about this for 10 years, but finally some action is happening. So I think it's a great undertaking.
I'll add to that, that I think the more of this we do, the more the towns and small cities out there are likely to feel like leaning into a regional process. It's good for everybody.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, I call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next item is 22-112, approval and acceptance of the Cumberland County Health Improvement Plan. And Alex, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Certainly. This is going to be a presentation from Liz Blackwell-Moore. She's been working through drafting up what has come to be known as CHIP. And I'll be honest, the first time I heard CHIP, I thought this would circle back and I think there's no reason to put CHIP in it. So the County Health Improvement Plan, and she'll walk you through it for your approval.
Great, thanks. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. I thought I'd present to you a little bit today on the process of getting to the County Health Improvement Plan, and then I thought I'd share some of the key objectives, goals, and strategies that we came up with for the County Health Improvement Plan. Of course, you have a draft document in front of you, and I'll share with you some of the additional changes that I think that there are a few additional things that need to happen for that document to be finalized, including any comments from you today. So the County Health Improvement Planning process, as you know, we led the process. I was the project lead on it, and we were able to get use ARPA funds to hire a contractor for this project. And with that, I was able to recruit folks to be on our advisory committee. So you'll see CHIP, yes, it's County Health Improvement Plan. So the CHIP advisory committee was made up of mostly paid staff from public health organizations across Cumberland County. You'll notice there's a few state folks that work on state wide organizations, but they all have, either live or have other things they do in Cumberland County. Mallory Shaughnessy might be familiar to you all as a former county commissioner. So those folks all volunteered to be a part of this advisory committee, and then we had our consultant, Zoe Miller. So the goal of the CHIP, the primary goal was really to create a county health improvement plan that acts as a guiding document for all of us in public health organizations in Cumberland County. The state has often in the past funded county health improvement plans or some sort of improvement plan. They haven't done that in quite some time now, and we were kind of, the last one ended in 2019. So we thought it was a really good time to do a county health improvement plan because of COVID and because we had one that lapsed, but also really to help us understand and identify what foundational public health programs and capabilities belong here at the Cumberland County Public Health Department, knowing that there are all these other public health organizations in Cumberland County who do quite a bit of public health work as well. So the advisory committee came up with a vision for our CHIP, and it was to, we envision a Cumberland County where communities are thriving, residents, organizations, and local governments connect and invest in collaborative actions, and every person has an equitable opportunity to live a healthy life. And I'll say that last line was really sort of a guiding principle for us to really think about who still has the most barriers to health and well-being. That Cumberland County as a whole is a fairly healthy place. I'll talk a little bit more about that, about the data. But when we pull apart different groups of people and different geographies, we see that there's really unequal health and well-being happening across the county. So we were really looking at and interested in thinking about how do we ensure that everybody has an equitable opportunity. So we used sort of a frame for understanding and for figuring out what we should be looking at in terms of health and health problems and things that impact health problems. So the city of Portland was also doing their county health improvement plan, and they had come up with this sort of healthy minds and bodies, healthy households and families, and healthy communities. So we decided to kind of use a similar frame for looking at how we kind of define health, because individuals live within families and households, and they live within communities, and all of those things kind of impact individual health. So when we think about what influences health, of course, our individual health behaviors, the behaviors that we have, or our access to health care or dental health, oral health, or behavioral health, those things all influence our health, but also our economic and social factors do, as well as the environments and the systems we live in. So when we thought about this question of, how healthy are we in Cumberland County, we wanted to look at health outcomes, like infectious disease or chronic disease or access to health care. But we also wanted to think about what are the community conditions that impact health. So we did a pretty deep look at unintentional injuries and household toxins, things that happen in households and families. And then we looked more deeply at community conditions, food insecurity, housing insecurity, transportation barriers. And again, as I said before, Cumberland County is very, on the surface, it's like one of the top 25 healthiest counties in the country. It's the healthiest county in Maine. But again, when we were looking at the data, we were also looking at disaggregated data. So we wanted to know by race, ethnicity, by geography, age, income, sexual identity. We were looking at, and we found quite a bit of differences there. So the advisory committee really wanted to look at how can we address health inequities specifically. So we decided to use this public health framework for reducing health inequities. And the framework there's some parts that are very intuitive in what I think we all think about with health, that our risk behaviors impact disease and injury, right? So like if we smoke, or we, aren't very physically active, or we, don't go to preventative health care, then we may be at higher risk for disease and injury and early death. So public health a common public health practice has been then to do things to impact risk behaviors. So whether that's, provide individual health education or enact policies that are really specific about reducing risk behaviors. So in this framework, I think, and we've come to understand in public health, and there's a ton of research to support the community conditions that people live in really impact people's risk behaviors. So, their economic security or their food security or their housing stability, all of those things impact the behaviors that they have. And we also know from the public health research that then inequities, social inequities or inequities that are in institutions, then can also drive those community conditions to be worse for certain people than others. And so in this framework, public health's role then can also be about building capacity and strategic partnerships and addressing policies that specifically impact those social and institutional inequities and improve the communities that people live in to improve their health. So we call this like going upstream. And so in this county health improvement plan, we were looking at, of course, you'll see there are things that we want to do that are around risk behaviors that we think are really important. But we also wanted to focus our attention and figure out what can we be doing upstream that can impact the health of those who have the greatest barriers to health and well-being. So the role of public health in that kind of emerging practice then is really to diagnose the health of communities. As a doctor diagnoses the health of an individual, public health really helps diagnose the health of a community and does that community engagement work to understand what's happening in a community. What are the strengths and what are the places where there's like real challenges that we could be supporting them to improve their health and well-being. We cooperate with many organizations in the communities. We facilitate that partnership and collaboration to do work that really takes all kinds of people from all different sectors to do the work of improving those community conditions. And then we prevent health problems before they start. So we can help with that researching and developing policies and building capacity. I think a big part is, whether that's funding or training or technical assistance to really build people's capacity to be able to address these community conditions. So in terms of the CHIP process that we went through, so those were kind of the frameworks we were using. The process that we had for prioritizing and engaging is we started by collecting a ton of data. And as I said, we tried to collect disaggregated data so we could understand the nuances of what was happening in Cumberland County. Then we went out and talked to a lot of people. So we gathered information about what's already happening, what are some of the gaps, and what do people think are the possible strategies that we should be using to address some of the big priority problems. And to do that community engagement, we talked to people who were really invested in working on a health topic, those health topics. We also talked to groups of people who really work with affinity groups, whether that's specifically working on the health and well-being of Black, Indigenous, or people of color, or lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, questioning folks, or rural, low income, older adults. Sorry. We also had meetings with superintendents and town managers. And then we took those and we researched the suggested strategies and public health evidence around those strategies. And we prioritized those that were kind of most likely to impact health inequities. And the advisory committee really supported that work. And we actually brought in a couple additional folks because we found that we didn't have great representation for folks who really knew deeply about food security, and also in rural, we had lost one of our members who was really doing a lot of work in the Lakes region, so we invited another Lakes region person to be a part of the prioritizing piece. And so what you see before you is like an almost finalized CHIP. So we interviewed 40 key informants, key leaders. You probably can't read that list, it's too tiny, but it's in the document that I've sent to you. And then we engaged about 200 folks through coalition and county health improvement planning meetings. So some of them was almost like we did a meeting takeover. You know, people invited us to their meeting, and we were able to use that meeting to get their feedback. And some we created on our own just for the CHIP. So in terms of the priority issues and strategies, what we ended with is our big priority, number one, is around advancing health equity. And so the goal is to expand the use of cross-cutting equity approaches. So you'll see more details on the strategies in there to help explain that one. It's not as self-explanatory as the other ones. In terms of priority 2, when we were talking about ensuring healthy minds and bodies, of course, behavioral health comes up so much and is still such a huge issue that needs to be addressed. So we have strategies around behavioral health and supporting access to oral health. And then in terms of the other priority areas around healthy communities, and you'll see that there's actually quite a bit around improving the community conditions and the institutions and community that people live in. So in terms of priority 1, what I'll say is that just in general, people who identify as Black, Indigenous, people of color, or LGBTQ+, or have low socioeconomic status, they just across the boards have the largest barriers to accessing consistent and regular health care. I don't think that's really a surprise to anyone, but I think what we found is so our first set of priority strategies is really around their process strategies about how we do our work in the future, about using a health equity lens, around building our capacity to collect better data. We found one of the big challenges was collecting good data, and then supporting language access, greater language access. And then the second set of strategies is really around creating focused collaborations and partnerships. If they don't exist, and if they do, joining those focused work to improve the health of LGBTQ+, immigrants, refugees, and folks seeking asylum, and then community health workers in rural areas. So in the advancing behavioral health, you'll have all of this for you, but I guess the big piece around advancing behavioral health is that behavioral health is really a challenge across the boards, but it's an even larger challenge for folks who are LGBTQ+ and BIPOC. Because of the ways in which they face high levels of stigma and discrimination, and in terms of people of color are more likely to live in poverty and be housing insecure, which puts you at greater risk for behavioral health issues. So we have fairly broad, universal strategies that we want to work on. You'll see the support for behavioral health liaisons within police department or law enforcement agencies, coordinated countywide overdose response. And then with the school side, I think a lot of that is to have some universal strategies, but also really focused ones as well on groups of folks that we know have higher rates of mental health and substance use disorder. So with the oral health, I think oral health has generally comes up as the 5th priority, and it never makes it on to these county health improvement plans. But dental disease is the most widespread chronic infectious disease in children. And in your packet, you'll see in this chip some of the data, and it's really shocking, actually, about how many children have not seen a dentist and how many children have no access to preventative oral health care. And families, low-income families and BIPOC families have, for sure, have the highest barriers to dental care. So our priority strategies, there is a lot of work happening around building out, having more preventative oral health. Main care just increased their rates. And so we think that it could really expand the amount of people children have been eligible for dental care through main care for a long time, but no one would take it. So we think with this increase in main care rates that there's this moment to actually really try to improve the infrastructure and create an infrastructure with what's happening out there in Cumberland County now to really increase access, specifically to folks in rural areas where there's a huge access issue. So then in terms of the priority area 3, which is around building healthy communities, you know, transportation, as you, I'm sure, all aware, is such a huge issue. And it's a huge issue in rural areas and actually in our more urban areas. So I think when we get to these on building healthy communities, those that are priority areas, there's really it was part of the process is figuring out what's public health's role, right? Like what can we be doing and be a part of to support these efforts? Because on the whole, improving transportation isn't generally a public health function, right? It's a function of all these other sectors. So part of what we identified was helping establish financing mechanisms for funding free fare transit and building capacity of mobility management. And mobility management is a really great evidence-based strategy for bringing in folks who have the highest barriers to transportation and hearing their challenges and then supporting them to help get those challenges met across transportation systems. So in terms of addressing racism and discrimination, really building capacity in schools to expand their work with supporting students, students of color and LGBTQ plus students, offering participatory grant making through some of our work. And then I think this piece around developing cross-sector collaborations, helping municipalities and organizations actually look at and do the work of addressing the systemic racism. That takes some capacity building, right? It's not a one training and done. There's some long-term work of really building that capacity. As we all know, housing is such a huge issue, and the strategies we chose are really around building capacity for housing diversion programs, so eviction prevention, especially in rural areas. And then this building capacity for testing and remediation of housing-related toxins. We heard a lot about how folks who are renters have no recourse, really, and have a hard time with dealing with the household toxins because of fear of being kicked out of the place that they're living if they were to bring those things up. And there is quite a bit of contaminated soil, wells, lead, and mold. All over Cumberland County. And then expanding food security, obviously this remains a huge issue across the board for folks, and so the Cumberland County Food Security Council does some really great work, and so some of the strategies are around actually just supporting them to expand their work beyond Greater Portland and really expand it to the other parts of Cumberland County. They ending up focused on Greater Portland, and they would love to be doing more work out in other parts of the county. So increasing culturally important food, expanding the food and agricultural education, and that local food procurement, that's all stuff that they do a lot of and would love to continue to do beyond out in the outer regions of the county. And then lastly, advancing environmental justice. What I'll say is race and socioeconomic status are the most significant predictors of whether a person in the U.S. lives near contaminated air, water, and soil. And so what we found in Cumberland County is that there are organizations that are working on some of the issues around contaminated air, water, and soil, but it's not necessarily connected and done in a collaborative or not even collaborative, but a connected way that people are utilizing resources and building capacity together. So the strategy is really around fostering that cross-sector collaboration and building capacity for increasing environmental justice initiatives across the county. So in terms of our implementation and next steps, I think the work is really collaborative. So as much as Cumberland County government was we were leading the project, the hope is that, I mean, this is a county-wide effort that we led with an advisory committee that's committed to being a part of implementing the strategies. So we'll continue to have those meetings and move this forward collaboratively. And then it's really about building capacity, right? It's like either funding or training or technical assistance to be able to address and do some of these strategies. And then measuring and sharing our progress over time and figuring out where we aren't able to make progress. So how can we, and what are the barriers there so that we can be communicating about those in order to meet those challenges. So the last thing I'll say, so that's really the presentation I wanted to give to you, but I will say that this is a near complete draft. The appendix still needs to be designed to put into, and I'll say the appendix that you have there is a very kind of detailed technical document with all the data and all the strategy research and everything in it. We kind of kept it separate than the health improvement plan, which we still would like to have the data put into visualization. So those are like kind of the two things that are left to happen in order for it to be a more like a final document. So thank you for listening, and I welcome you to ask any questions that you have.
Can I just quickly, Liz, we had it on here to do an approve and accept of this.
Yes.
Are you saying you are close enough that that's something that would be okay to have them go?
Yes,
Okay.
it's like minor changes. It's really just minor changes to the formatting. It's really a formatting issue that we weren't quite finished with before bringing it to you.
Just wanted to get that.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have any more questions from the commissioners?
Well, we need to move acceptance, right?
Yes.
So I would move that we accept and approve the Cumberland County Health Improvement Plan.
Second? Okay. Is there any discussion or anything?
Comment, just a very thorough presentation. You and the collaborators throughout the country county have done a great job, a very thorough presentation. And again, it's going to, I'm sure, reap a lot of benefits down the road.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thanks.
I thought it was particularly well done to kind of identify as a public health issue, kind of the overriding social issues or community issues that people have been talking about, housing, food security, systemic racism issues, and some of the sub-communities that everybody, I think, has recognized that was trying to understand what was going on, is recognize that are subject to discrimination pressures, self-imaging issues, and things like that. So I thought it was very well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, this whole initiative is a relatively new thing that we are entering into. I think historically this has been a topic that the county is supposed to have been involved in and just hasn't been. With the we get some funding, we get some good people. We are building something that I think will help people all across the county. That's bigger in scale than just any one community should be asked to deal with on its own. So I look at this as kind of a framework that other smaller communities can kind of plug into this, and won't have to build their own building from the ground up. It'll be something that's there available to everybody. So I think this is a wonderful start, and thank you very much. I'm still digging through this, but it's a fascinating information included in this. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I can't help but remember going to some very lengthy meetings. We had a committee, we toiled away at that for a number of years, and it was just, it was kind of probably organized with the wrong bent, because there were a lot of healthcare providers that were involved. And they had things like staffing needs and budgets and all kinds of other priorities that they needed to address beyond public health. They were all very interested in it, but the resources and the capacity to deal with it was
Well,
definitely.
yeah, and I mean, obviously, what's given this a shot in the arm, so to speak, is the combination of the COVID, of the pandemic, which has sort of brought home that we need to look at these things on a community-wide basis, because that's what a pandemic is. It's a community-wide illness that spreads, spreads and maybe can be contained, but it takes a lot of collective effort to do it, coupled with the funding that's been coming out of the trying to recover from the COVID pandemic. So this is, my hope is that this doesn't end as our concern or anxiety or paranoia about the pandemic kind of ramps down, that we can keep building on this, because this has, you talk about unhoused people and, all the factors that go into this that's out there. That doesn't go away. That was here before, it's here now, and it'll continue to be an issue. And if we can use this as a way to help address it at a governmental level, this can be nothing but good, I think. So this is an interesting, I like the historical perspective that we finally getting this thing going, and it's taken a couple of bites at the apple, but I think we
We
did.
did have a mass inoculation for, I think it was swine flu, but it was, there was a real fire drill around that, but other than that, it really, it's a vast topic.
Okay, I call for vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item was added. We won't be having an executive session. That will be the next month. But the next item, oops, I just lost it. Can you read that, Alex? Because I just lost it on the.
Sure, the subject in mind is acceptance of federal law enforcement behavioral health response Department of Justice grant.
Okay. Then I'm going to turn this over to you, Alex.
So this is a request that came to us late last week for acceptance for a Department of Justice grant. The amount that the Department of Justice is going to be funding will be $203,000 with a county match. The position paper states $50,000 on it. The Chief Deputy is here. I guess I would invite him to come on up and say some words on it if he'd like, and then I'll have some comments after that before moving on to discussion on next steps.
The comments I can make are very limited because I only got the document today, and I know that Captain Craig Smith and his staff have been working on this, and that what it is would be a behavioral health response that would the healthcare worker for behavioral health would be going out in the field with the deputies periodically, and also working from an office within our facilities.
So I'll jump down some of the features here, sort of going through some of the lists of thoughts on this. In general, this particular program and this concept is something we've seen before. It's something that we're doing for 3 towns through ARPA funding. It's a definite need that's out there that's we're hearing about as something that would be a good thing to ultimately do as a good end goal for the citizens of the county. However, I do think that there is some work that needs to be done before we could move towards acceptance of this grant. I have some questions that I need to ask Captain Smith regarding budget's amount in the application versus the grant, and also whether this is being treated as a sub-award versus a procurement contract. Those are more detailed issues, but they definitely matter in terms of being able to give a go on accepting it. The bigger piece of the puzzle, obviously, is the funding mechanism. The position paper lists $50,000 over a 3-year period, $14,000 the first year, which would be the 23-24 budget, which has gone out to Finance Committee already, so this would be an add on top of that. So that's certainly a discussion topic for the commissioners, is how to do that. Another option along those ways for possibly the funding might be making use of ARPA funds. This is certainly something that we've already undertaken for a very, very similar program. But these two programs, the DOJ program and the ARPA fund, they will have some differences, and we need to have a sit-down to see if there's a way to make the two programs play nice with each other. And then we really need to have some serious discussion with this grant on making sure that we're going to pass the compliance tests on the reporting moving forward, because that difference between procurement contract and sub-award might not sound much verbally, but it's a huge deal in terms of passing through the compliance. So those are the thoughts. Those are why our recommendation would be to push this to a later date, to have a more in-depth discussion on how to find a way to make this go. Unfortunately, if we were to push this to the next commissioners meeting, that would be one day after the deadline to approve this. So it would have to be the deadline by the Department of Justice. It is 45 days from when they issued the letter. The letter was issued on September 29th. So I did the math, and that works out to November 13th. The next commissioners meeting is November 14th. So that's why I think in order to move forward with this, we would have to do a workshop to discuss a plan to make this go.
And then call a special meeting to have the vote prior to.
Yeah, we need more than a workshop to
Right.
approve something.
Right.
Okay, so I just, I think you correctly, you both have correctly kind of mentioned, and the memo, of course, does that too. This is something that we're interested in trying to make happen. I will say that the opera end of it is very complicated sometimes when it comes to compliance and management. And we've been pretty careful to make sure that our people are able to have good firm control over how things happen and when. That having been said, I do favor the opera funding, frankly, and would want to hope that would be an element of the plan, at least for the years that it want. But I'm really, I understand we're down several people tonight because of various causes, not all of which were foreseen. So I favor a workshop, special meeting. Maybe we can do it over Zoom. Probably, I'll leave that to the chair to figure out. But I think we should try to do that. Even if it, for instance, if we decide that we should hold a regular November meeting a week ahead of time in November, that would be all right with me too. But that kind of logistics seems to me to be driven by being able to make sure that the various things that Alex has mentioned didn't happen. So we're all on the same page and we'll be confident that we're not going to all be answering questions to the DOJ in about 2 years.
Neil and I won't be here.
I'm sorry?
Neil and I won't be here in 2 years, so we won't have to answer.
Well, we'll be here in 2 years, but not 2 years and 2 months.
You understand that means we're going to blame you for
That's
Of
right.
course.
Exactly.
And how would that differ from anything else, Jim?
Is that a change of plans? Not everybody would say so.
So Alex, well, the next step would be to send it to the workshop. Right?
Yeah, unless you folks decide to move up the meeting by a week and do it as a
I
regular
would,
meeting.
well,
And then we could have that before it and then do a vote on it.
I would leave that up to the chair.
Yeah.
At this
okay.
point,
What is everybody's schedule for November 7th if we move the 14th our meeting up to the 7th?
That's fine for me. I got a deposition in the morning, but
Yeah, that
I
won't
can't
be-
imagine I'll be doing that at 5 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah, I'm available on the 7th. So let's do it on the 7th.
The 7th
Jim?
is a Monday, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Election day the next day.
That's
Right.
right. Okay, so we will move this to our next meeting on November the 7th. We could have the workshop before the meeting, and then we could go into the meeting. So we'd have to have all the parties here.
5 p.m.
Yeah. If we,
5 o'clock.
Yep.
we can start at 5 and have all the parties here, which would be the sheriff, Captain Smith, the Jim. Yeah,
And we would need to have either Liz or Sandy or both.
right.
For the
Yeah,
officer
Liz,
compliance.
yeah, I
Right.
would probably have them,
Uh,
or both of them.
And I've pulled both of them earlier today.
Okay.
For those.
Good.
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot of overlap there, and there's a lot of overlap on a lot of these. One of the reasons we are comfortable with the other piece is, again, we're doing something so very similar.
Right.
We've done that research to
Right.
see, okay, yes, this definitely hits the bullseye.
Yeah,
The DOJ needs are not particularly different, so that
good.
there's, we're not seeing anything jumping off the page to us as, boom, but
Yeah.
you know, like all DOJ grants, it has different conditions to it, so we
Right,
gotta
yeah.
go through all of those.
Yeah,
But mostly, we really need to talk through, again, funding mechanisms, the sub-awardee piece, which basically is a whole extra layer of commissions. Because this grant would basically turn it over to Sterling to do this work, which would mean that they would be making their own decisions. And anytime you're paying somebody to sort of make their own decisions, there's a whole extra layer of compliance needs associated with it. So that's one of the things that we really need to have ironed out for the next meeting. It is written as procurement, but I don't think it will stay that way.
okay.
So I'll move to table this till 2 workshops, to be considered a workshop, and
Okay, yeah, which will be on November the 7th.
yeah.
So we will let everybody know that, Alex, or when Jim comes back, or we can just send it out, or tomorrow, that the meeting has been changed to the 7th, and this will be on.
Do you need a second for that motion?
Yeah.
I'll second.
No other discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I'll tell Jim that he needs to do a 10-page memo tomorrow.
By noon, I'd like it by 9.
Thank you.
9:30.
Yeah,
Thank you, Naldo.
thanks, Naldo.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
thank
Good
you.
night.
Well, we'll just-
Yep.
Yes. Thank you both.
Okay. Okay, the next item is comments from the county manager, but he's not here tonight,
The
so-
deputy manager, isn't it?
Yeah, but that would come under the executive staff. Do you have anything that you would like to say tonight?
Oh, I was going to say something as deputy manager.
Oh, okay, that's fine, yes, sure.
No,
yeah.
no comments. I've talked for you tonight. Thank you.
No, if you've got comments as for the deputy manager, you have 30 seconds. Okay, the executive staff? No? Naldo? You all set? Well, Catherine? Okay, wow. County or commissioners, do they have anything to say? Commissioner Claudia?
As you know, I usually have nothing to say.
Right.
Very quiet, yeah.
Okay, so you're all set?
I'm all set, other than the trees are finally starting to change color. I'm
Right,
happy we've been,
that's-
I had visitors from England last
Oh.
week who missed the whole thing, missed the show,
Oh,
so,
wow. Okay.
but I'm happy to see them.
Neil?
And just quickly, between now and our November 7th meeting, most of our county athletic teams will be participating in the playoffs. Those are the teams that make the playoffs. So get out there and support your teams and these great student athletes who have worked hard for these last several months. It should be an exciting several weeks through that process. And as the political season in our election comes to fruition on November 8th, we'll have a meeting, but absentee ballot, I think, started this week. So get out and vote. No matter what your position is, who you support, it's important to participate in the process. That's what makes our democracy work. So get out and vote this session. Thank you.
And I don't have anything, so,
Move we adjourn.
Second?
is all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.